Welcome to Raging Bullets, a comics fan podcast, Season 2, Episode 764, Anniversary Show Part 2.
Raging Bullets, a podcast for comic fans on the internet.
Download or stream it now.
Hosted by the legendary Sean and Jim. Spoilers are ahead.
Let's talk some comics now.
The Raging Bullet Show. Let's go.
Welcome to Raging Bullets. I am Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the Minister of More Gooder, finally has a chance to hug it out with longtime rival Johnny Storm, and of course he is the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we are going to be talking about Avengers number 400 and Fantastic Four number 300 as we wrap up our two-part look at anniversaries in comics. We're sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what's going on over at DCBService.com?
Bring on the bad guys. Doom, issue 1. This is a really cool 7-issue one-shot villainous one-shot where Dr. Doom has to stop this Sister Sorrow from using the Soul Forge to collect all the souls on Earth. Really looks really cool, and I'm 100% down for this one. Thank you, DCBS. 36% off, only $3.19. And, of course, if we're talking Doom, we got to talk the 4. Now, it looks like issue 33 will probably be the end of the current Fantastic Four run, because we're also getting a Fantastic Four issue number 1. Both of those are also 36% off. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, we have our deals of the week. We have the Batman Elmer Fudd, the Deluxe Edition hardcover, $19.99 regularly, 50% off, only $9.99. Batgirl, Nobody Dies Tonight, the DC Finest trade paperback, $39.99 regularly, 55% off, only $17.99. I just talked about it this episode. The official handbook of the Marvel Universe Master Edition Omnibus hardcover. $100 regularly, 46% off, only $54. Tomo-chan is a Girl Omnibus Graphic Novel, Volume 3, $24.99 regularly, 45% off, only $10.99. Thank you very much, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
DC High Volume, Batman. The Dark Knight's definitive DC Comics stories. Adapted directly for audio for the very first time.
Fear. I have to make them afraid.
He's got a motorcycle. Get after him or I'll have you shot.
You mean blow up the building?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
New episodes every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Our first discussion this episode is going to be Avengers 400. Mark Waid on the story, Mike Waringo on the breakdowns, Tom Palmer on finishes, John Callis on colors, Malibu computer color, Bill Oakley on letters, Mark Grunwald editor, and Bob Harris editor-in-chief. This was a fun one to do. I had never read this issue before, and anniversary issues, I do usually jump on, if it's not a book that I'm reading or something like that, just because they're usually really cool, done-in-one stories. They usually feature a lot of characters, and it's a good chance to see, is this book right for me? This issue did all of that, in the sense that you don't have to have a lot of background knowledge in the Avengers in order to jump on this issue. This isn't like the wrap up of a story or anything like that, because sometimes they are. The anniversary issues, sometimes because they're oversized, they will tend to be the wrap up of a multi-part story. I deliberately picked done-in-ones for this, so that way anybody listening could just join us for the issues that we were going to talk about, and there was enough representation here. From the Marvel side of it, this was good, because I don't know, which is strange for me, Mark Waid, who I adore, I didn't read his run of Avengers, not because I think budget-wise it just didn't fit into my budget at the time. So this is a treat to be able to go and read this issue and really enjoy, the guy who I love so, Mark Waid, I equate him with the Flash, but That's not fair because Mark Waid's done so much amazing work. But The Flash was really where, with his run on Wally, was really where I was like, oh, Mark Waid is like the bomb. This is really, really cool. What was your exposure with this? Had you read any of this? I know, Marvel tended to be more of your jam before we did Raging Bullets. Were you a regular Avengers reader at all, or where does this fit?
No, I was never a regular Avengers reader. Part of the reading I've done, there may have been a stretch in college when I read some, but it was not remotely anything I would say regular reader at all.
Yeah.
So this issue, this is my first exposure to this issue at all. And like you, I honestly had no idea Mark Waid wrote Avengers. I was like, oh, that is cool. Because you go through it and you're like, I know that name and he is awesome. So I started off reading this book thinking, oh, this is going to be cool because I know who created it. He's a great guy. He's a great writer. I love his work. I was excited for this. And Avengers is all, again, it's with me in team books, I'm honestly surprised I didn't read the Avengers, just because I love team books, and I don't know what it was, why I didn't, in my college days, why I didn't pick it up. I was reading Captain America, in college, and I don't know why I didn't pick up Cap and the Avengers at the time. For whatever reason, it could have been something as simple as a budget issue, because again, college, you don't have a lot of free money, lying around. So I had to pick and choose. I was getting all of the X books when there were multiple X books. So that's where a majority of all my money went to. Every time there was something with an X in the title, I was jumping on it. So I really didn't have a lot of wiggle room, for other titles. So I was very happy and very excited to read this because, it's funny. You start just on the cover, and I'm looking at the cover art, and I'm seeing things. I'm like, I don't remember people looking like that, So that was something that, I was like, because I don't ever remember reading a story where Wasp looked like Wasp, and then the Thor outfit, and even the Iron Man outfit had a little bit of a different tinge to it. So it was kind of neat for me, just, from jump, going, ooh, this is kind of cool.
Did you read Onslaught? When the Xavier story with because it was a huge crossover. It's why I'm shocked. I did. It's why I'm shocked I didn't read this issue, because this issue, the ending. I know I'm jumping to the ending, but the ending piece with X-Man, because it really is an epilogue, not really the ending of this. Right. That's leading into Onslaught, which I read, and I read the crossovers with Onslaught. It's very rare for me when there's a big crossover not to grab every single tendril that touched on it. So, like, this issue, because of the fact that it ends leading into Onslaught, I'm surprised I didn't grab this back in the day. That's not like me at all. So I don't know how I missed this one. I'm glad I'm reading it. I'm glad I read it now for this purpose. I was an avid X-Men reader at the time. I did read Onslaught. I grabbed every single crossover off of that one. This is one that was a gap this issue, I should say, was a gap that I missed. And I think maybe just because there was a cameo at the end leading into it. But that's not like me, though. I am a completist when it comes to like crazy crossovers and stuff like that, where I want every little part. This one was like, how did I not? This is not like me at all. So this was eye-opening for me that I missed an issue that really would have been in my wheelhouse. The artist, too, I want to note, is also Mike Waringo, was an artist on the Flash series of books when Mark Waid was doing Flash and Impulse and stuff like that. So this is an artist who he's had a partnership with predating the Avengers. This was a big team to come over to Marvel and be working on this.
You know what? I just realized something, because it's got the date on the cover, 96. This was my period where I wasn't reading any comic books.
Okay.
This was post-college, when I was still trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do now that I have a degree. What am I going to use the degree for? So I was not reading any comic books at this point in time.
Did you read Onslaught?
I don't know if I ever read it.
That might be a fun thing to do at some point in time. It's big.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, it's a big story. I mean, it'd be something where we would be like doing multi-parts. But I actually really enjoy doing those things, so that might be one where we do it. The other one I want to ask you about, did you read? Because there are two characters that stand out for me on the, and I'm going to put quotes around the villain side because it's, depending on what you're reading, it's hard to label what they are. Did you ever read Squadron Supreme?
No.
So Squadron Supreme, it actually spun out. It was like a multiversal Avengers team that went up against. It was almost like the DC heroes going up against the Avengers, but they're not the DC heroes. Hyperion's the guy that looks like Superman, with the red outfit.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Spectrum is kind of like a Green Lantern archetype. They're similar archetypes, but they have a whole team, and it really is like almost like Marvel's Justice League. And we should do that series because it's an excellent series in general. And it led to Squadron Supreme led to an eventual reboot of Supreme Power, which is I believe it's called Supreme Power. They spin off afterwards. Gary Frank did the art on it. It was gorgeous, a really, really gorgeous book. They did do a relaunch of the Squadron Supreme characters and put them into that book, and it was very good stuff. So it's worth reading. This really did exactly what I love from anniversary issues, in the fact that it spotlighted all of your favorite main characters, but at the same time it had just a lot of fun characters to be able to read and get to know. The team, I'm with you as far as the status quo piece. I vaguely remember, for Thor's outfit, I remember there being a change at some point. I remember Iron Man's outfit. It wasn't uncommon for them to have fun with Iron Man because of the fact that you could do new versions of his suit with new capabilities. He was constantly advancing it. The Wasp piece, I don't remember that, which is pretty crazy. But it, again, goes back to the fact that I wasn't reading Avengers except for crossover pieces. I feel like, and I'm trying to remember back, Onslaught's been a long time now because you're saying 96. So you're right, this is a long time ago. I read Onslaught back in the day. I haven't read it since. I thought it crossed over into Avengers. That's why I'm shocked. I don't think this end of the issue where X-Man's there, I think Avengers, because Onslaught was like a Marvel Universe event. It was an X-Men event, but it encapsulated the Marvel Universe because of the scope and scale of what was going on there. I mean, you remember X-Man from Age of Apocalypse and how powerful he was. When he's running scared, it tells you the story that you've got in front of you. Onslaught was a big deal. So when I saw the end of this, I wasn't thinking of the time frame until we got to the end. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this leads into Onslaught. Really, really cool story. What I loved about this is it's something we talked about when we were talking Justice League. And we see it here when you flip the page. Jarvis. Jarvis was fantastic in this. I always loved the concept of Jarvis. I think my soft spot for him, and I want to be careful with this because they're not the same character, but I like the concept. He has the loyalty and love for the team that Alfred has for Batman. But it's for the team. He is like an integral part of the Avengers. Over the years, they have done like really cool stories revolving around the importance of Jarvis and what he brings to the team. And I've always loved when he's not always been like there's been story arcs where he was gone for periods of time and stuff like that. But I do love these storylines where they embrace Jarvis being there. These statues in the opening are baffling to me because they're adamantium statues. Adamantium is like this rare metal. What are we doing with it? I got a great idea. It's this rare indestructible metal that can do so much good. Let's make some statues out of it. like, what are we doing here? It's one of the parts that, I'm like, oh my gosh. I do love like the way it plays into the story arc though. So it sounds like I'm knocking it. I'm really not. It was from a storytelling perspective. It was actually a cool idea. But I did think to myself, I'm like, if this metal is so rare, like it's on Wolverine's bones and like pretty much so nowhere else, maybe that's not the best use for it. Maybe not a vanity piece. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, and again, like you, I liked how it played out later on in the story. But it is something that it makes you wonder, what were they thinking, really? You didn't need an adamantium statue, dude.
It did fit the story. I mean, and by the way, I really enjoy this story. When I was looking at the statues, I had to throw that one out right away because that was a piece. This, the young man who shows up there, and can we just say it's just Loki? Because, we're going to be talking about this anyway. I was not thinking Loki. I was actually thinking not because of the situation. I thought he might actually be a good guy trying to help. With I don't know if you had like bad vibes off him from the get-go. I read the urgency. I mean, obviously anybody that shows up on the scene that's an unknown, there is that part of it that's suspect. Like, what if this guy turns? What if he's not who he sees? So there was elements of that there, but at least on face value with the way he was dressed and everything like that, I don't know, this is like some chronal good guy from the future who's like trying to help out. I really liked the way they billed him at first, because you could see him being potentially a good guy. It added a sense of danger to this whole thing that I wasn't thinking that the big bad was standing next to Jarvis all along. Were you? I mean, that's my experience. Where were you at with this?
It wasn't until later. When he first hit the scene, I honestly was thinking this was a time traveler coming back. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason I thought that was you look at the color pattern. He's got the red and the red and the gold, kind of like how Iron Man does. The look to him a little bit reminded me of what's his name, Rick. Why am I drawing a blank on his last name?
Hunter.
No, not from DC. Bruce's friend.
Jones. Jones.
Yeah. He kind of, to me, he had a look of, I've seen that
from the Hulk. You're talking about from the Hulk, right?
Yeah, from the Hulk. Yeah. I've seen that kind of look before, and I was just like, I was like, I could see this being one of their descendants. I could see this being, one of the supporting pieces descendants, and actually, I was even thinking in the back of my head, maybe this was a Jarvis descendant, So when he first hit the scene, I was not actually thinking villain. Later on, I started thinking villain. But initially, I was thinking this was an actual legit hero. And also, like the opening scene when he's running, that kind of looks similar to what Wonder Man costume had. I'm not saying a copy of it. But like it had like elements of it. I was like, okay, I could see somebody who had to travel back in time, who was inspired, who's a part of the Avengers in the future kind of thing going on.
It's a very 90s outfit. When you take a look at Typhon the Time Skimmer, I mean, it really, it fit. Like, everything fits. The look fit. Like, Loki was brilliant on this one.
Oh, God,
Because I'm with you. During the storytelling, you start to see the cracks in the armor on this one. But for me, in the beginning, I was like, who's Typhon the Time Skimmer? I'm like, why don't I know this character? Looked pretty cool. Looked like, I love time travel characters. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. It did all the right pieces. The Black Knight in this one is an interesting character because it's been a good guy, been a bad guy. This whole battle between the Quicksilver and his sister, or Scarlet Witch, was really great. I kept forgetting over the years because we've seen in the Marvel movies just how powerful the Scarlet Witch is. We've seen it in many, many stories. House of M and stuff like that over the years, just how infinitely powerful she is. But I forgot about the fact that her power can be very random. When you're in battle, a lot of times, she is an essential asset, but sometimes that power can go wrong. I really enjoyed how this played out. I also forgot that Quicksilver was married to Crystal, who at one point in time, I think she was the one that dated Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four back in the day. It was which was much earlier than this. I do remember the two of them being married. I just forgot that was a thing. And it was great to see her in this because I've always loved those characters being introduced. But a lot more of my experience with them has been, admittedly, the Fantastic Four. And seeing them in that particular place. But the opening battle was cool because I loved seeing, these cameos with characters, seeing these different versions of the Avengers, seeing Vision show up on the scene. I really like the Vision. I shouted out on a couple of our ads, and I did it deliberately, the Marvel Masterworks of Vision and Scarlet Witch, the miniseries. I think you said you hadn't read that, right? The original 12-issue run of that?
Right.
That's something that we've got so many stories, both DC and Marvel, to do. I actually love that. Here's the thing: we did the DC portion of this podcast for 18 years before we started doing this version 2, which still incorporates DC but also incorporates Marvel and Independence. Really, it opens up the playing field to so many great DC stories that we haven't done yet, and all of these great Marvel stories that we haven't done. I've got in my head, I'd love to reread that, or I'd love to check out this. I'd love to check out West Coast Avengers at some point in time, because I have a lot more experience reading West Coast Avengers than I do Avengers. Avengers, it was very broken. I read them in crossovers. Anytime there was a crossover where there were Avengers issues, case in point Onslaught, I was sure to grab them. I grabbed initiatives like Heroes Reborn. Did you read any of that stuff?
No.
So they relaunched the entire Marvel line. Well, not the entire Marvel line, but they relaunched a lot of your main line, like the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, Captain America, stuff like that. They relaunched in Heroes Reborn, and it was kind of cool to see all of that relaunched. I remember reading Jim Lee's Fantastic Four, and it was outstanding. The new Captain America. I mean, all that stuff was fun because they were. It's kind of like what DC did, whether you liked it or not. What DC did with the New 52, they did. Heroes Reborn did it first, and the idea of just doing the complete line-wide relaunch like that. I don't know if you count what DC did as after Crisis on Infinite Earths. I guess you could as the same thing because they did it with Superman, with Man of Steel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which was great. So I guess I don't know who came first, the chicken or the egg. I guess I'm back to DC did it first with that whole piece. But I do like these relaunches that are meant to be jump-on points, mainly because they usually wind up being really good stories during the kickoff of them. They inevitably somehow the old universe gets folded back in. So as a fan who likes continuity, I never get stressed out about these things because I know eventually they're just going to give us back the old universe anyway. It's all about great storytelling. But I did read runs of Marvel during that time where I was jumping on a lot of characters that I hadn't normally read because of the Heroes Reborn initiative, which led to eventually Heroes Return, which brought them back. And that stuff's always kind of fun for me.
It's funny you talk about just the reboots and relaunches. When we first started doing this show, that kind of stuff threw me. Even though I jumped in on, the 52 weeks later, the 1 year later program, and that, brought me on back into comics full time. The relaunching of series always, when we first started doing this, that kind of threw me. I was one of those guys who's oh, why are they doing that? Oh, now as I'm older and I'm more mellow on a lot of stuff, I'm that's kind of cool. All right, let's do it. Let's see where it's go. I'm now more in the line of let's see where the story takes us. Let's have some fun with this. Let the creative do their thing. It's one of those weird things that time, gives you different types of perspective on things. And you look at things differently. The one page here after the big fight, and the heroes, of course, win. I love the sequence with the people yeah, New York loves you. Yeah, you're not like those creepy X-Men's. And they're you think we should? They think they know they're referring to brother and sister mutant team, an Inhuman, and a Synthoid. I love nowadays that line right there. I love that kind of stuff. I know. Earlier on, when I was younger, something like that would have really just gone over my head. And that's something I love about really cool comic books, where they can throw just a little, just kind of social commentary, in with the fun, in with the action, in with in with all the neat stuff that we like reading. You have a little bit of extra in there, just a little zing, just a little, hey, people, pay attention to what you're doing.
The Vision's a character that I've always enjoyed, because you and I are big fans of Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation, and Data and his art, where it was the robot that had human qualities that kept trying to become more and more human, and the idea that like this artificial intelligence could become more human. With the Vision's complicated history, especially with the link with the original Human Torch, and there being elements of the Vision that are human and have human background to them and things like that, and actually at one point in time being married to Scarlet Witch, he's a character who I've always... They wiped the slate with him in the sense that they made him back to being a true artificial life form, but he kept always gradually getting back the humanity, the caring side of him. It's stuff that I like about Red Tornado too, over on the DC side. I love robotic characters like this, the idea of where artificial intelligence and artificial life could go. It's funny, we talk about AI so organically nowadays, and it's something that we're seeing in front of us right now and trying to figure out how to navigate. Comics have been dreaming this stuff up for years. I mean, this goes way back. The idea of just some form of computerized sentient life that was created that way. It's very timely, actually, to be talking about robots like Vision in kind of this era that we're in right now. And it's kind of a fun little piece. It's also interesting to see, without getting political, in this climate right now, to see the reaction to the Avengers and how they immediately go to, let's diss the X-Men. Those creepy X-Men. And yet the members of the team that are there, two of them are mutants that were sitting there, and Crystal's an Eternal. And it's like sit here like, okay, I get it that you're saying that we're not as creepy as this other group, but yet realistically, these are our brothers over there. I thought that was such great commentary. It was awesome.
I know. Again, it's this is one of those cool. One of the things I always love about the X stories, because they tie all this kind of stuff in there. Mm-hmm. I love when they do that, and I love when other comics actually identify this. And it's just, again, it's complete. I understand human nature and how they're doing this and why these people are like, yay, the Avengers are cool. But here's the thing, dude. You got mutants right there, you know?
But this fits X-Men history, too.
Oh, big time.
Which I feel like it's a consistency with the universe versus being forced in there. It fits that world, which is it's always fun when your comic book worlds are reflective of when art imitates life, right?
Yeah.
And I think they do a great job with that, with how they handled this. I like that they had a couple panels where they just talked about that. I thought it was really cool because it fits those characters. It'd be weird if those characters didn't have a reaction because of their backgrounds.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden we start seeing weird things happening. Like those buildings, this whole thing engulfing the entire block, those weird buildings that are appearing there. We start seeing signs of these villains and locations being altered by something that's going on. I thought this was an attack on the Avengers. I still, at this point in the story, I'm not at all thinking our Typhon guy. I'm not thinking he's got anything to do with this. I'm thinking the Avengers are being attacked on all sides.
Yeah.
Hawkeye's outfit threw me a little bit when he came in, just because I'm used to a certain look with Hawkeye. I remembered that costume like after I got, over the hump of, oh, yeah, that is Hawkeye. But the one thing that stood out to me the most, and it was an interesting artistic choice, was Captain America's eyebrows. His eyebrows appear a lot in this. Especially when you get that close-up of him and you're seeing the eyebrows appearing out of the mask. That was an interesting artistic take, was to have that in there. It didn't ruin anything. The pronounced eyebrows were like pretty much, did you notice those at all?
Not at all. I did not even once notice.
Do you see them now?
Now I do. Now that you say it, yeah.
It stood out for me as something. It's not a knock. I'm not like cracking on the art or anything like that. If anything, it kind of adds a reality of it, like the way that mask is. Well, yeah, like where do the eyebrows go? I mean, it's not like they vanish because he's got it in there. I thought it was just an interesting artistic choice for the close-up. Because when you see him at more of a distance in the earlier panel, you don't see him. But when you got that close-up, the eyebrows are like prominent right there. I was like, wow, that was an interesting take. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, Cap's wings on his face mask is something I always notice.
Yeah,
because everybody does them a little bit different. Some make them flat on the mask. Others make them more pronounced. Some little tidbits. Others are like, I'm like, if he catches a strong headwind, he's going airborne with them bad boys. So I do like, that's something I do notice on Cap's uniform more than anything else.
As Jarvis is making through the hallway of the Avengers mansion with Typhon, I always liked this about the Avengers. I think it was something that, to me, I think at its best, Justice League replicates elements of this, but I always thought the Avengers did it better. The Avengers really embraces the idea of reservists and classic members and this rotating team. And when you're going through the mansion, there are always... like, you see the Beast picture, you see Falcon's picture, you see Captain Marvel's, Hellcat, Star Fox. You see all of these classic Avengers that are memorialized by the fact that there's some form of, picture and honoring of them there. Once an Avenger, always an Avenger is kind of the mentality with that. And I feel like they really embrace that. I don't want Justice League or Avengers ever to be carbon copies of each other. I actually really admire the differences between the two. I feel like there's a different flavor. This is an example of, I think, a flavor that is truly Avengers and separates them from the Justice League in the way that they handle classic former teams and reservists. And I actually like the distinction. It's not something I totally want the Justice League to ever adopt. Like, I love what's going on right now with the current Justice League book. But I don't feel it's this, and I don't want it to be this. I want this to be the Avengers. I think that distinction just stands out for me. It's something that I think it's a cool quality.
And here's something. I don't know if this was a conscious art choice to make us think this, but I'll tell you right now, this page you're talking about really locked into me that our boy here was a good guy. And the reason being Star Fox's picture.
Really?
I'm sitting there, and I'm looking, I go, holy crud, look at the similarities of the two faces. And then I even went back to the first page and looked at how the eyebrows are drawn when he first hits the ground. I'm like, dude, those are similar eyebrows. He's a descendant of Star Fox. Oh, that is so cool. So now in my head, I'm thinking this is how he's able to survive because he's a Star Fox descendant and he was off somewhere in outer space doing his things. I was like, oh, that is so cool. And again,
how familiar are you with Star Fox?
Very, very, very little. Okay. And that's the thing. And that's what, and again, that was part of the thing. I was like, I knew he was like, outer space kind of like space piratey type thing, and that I was like, oh, that makes sense why the Avengers could possibly die and he comes back and this. And I was like playing out this whole story arc in my head going, and I don't know if that was a conscious choice of them to have his picture there or not, and I was like, that is kind of cool.
I've read more Avengers than I'm giving myself credit for. Because I read runs with Star Fox in it as a member of the team, and that's why I wasn't thinking that. I'm not saying you're wrong for thinking that way. This is an example of where, depending on your reading and what characters you've focused on, would lead you. This is where the story, I think, works on very different, on multiple levels, right? Depending on what you're, and that's where anniversary issue should do this. It gets you thinking. So I get totally why I'm looking at the picture and I'm seeing the logic behind it. Because I've read Star Fox, I wasn't thinking that piece, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. It's just different reading exposures to it.
I know.
Where I read the most Avengers, where I always reference those comic book 3-packs I got as a kid. And, if I got a Marvel one where there were like 3 issues in there, invariably, and it seems strange that I would say this, the 3rd issue that was in the middle a lot of times wound up being an Avengers issue. And it wasn't what I was seeking out, but I always liked it. Mainly because we always seek out the books that we're following, or trying to follow monthly. And those 3-packs sometimes were great ways to get back issues of books that you missed. But that was where I read Star Fox the most. And at first, I remember when I first read the Avengers, I was completely disinterested in the character because I had no background with him. Nothing, not knocking the character. But then after a few issues of reading the Avengers with him in there, I grew to really love the character because we could do a whole separate episode on at some point in time, we'll do a story with Star Fox in it and really talk about the character. But there's reasons why I wasn't thinking it was Star Fox that don't fit. But I get it for, like, if you didn't read the character, your logic as far as why you were connecting it, sure. And even having read Star Fox, if he had identified himself at the beginning as a descendant of Star Fox, I wouldn't have questioned it. So there's a 1,000% logic behind this whole thing. This whole idea of him using Jarvis the way that he did, Loki, this part was great. I need you're the witness to all of this. You've seen the history of the Avengers. I need you to be recounting all this so we can try to find the villain. At first, I was buying into what he was selling.
Yeah, me too.
But, so this part, I was buying into the whole thing. We're like, let's use Jarvis. Let's discover who the big bad is behind all of this piece. We're leading into there. It is also, though, this is where the cracks do start to subtly form. Because he's being pretty aggressive about all this. And I will admit, when I was reading this the first time through, I was not catching on to that vibe yet. It was my second read through. I'm like, wow, they sprinkled this right from the get-go that, like, there's something wrong with him. With Typhon, when you go back and reading it knowing what happened, you start to see he was being real aggressive there with what he was doing with Jar. Like he wasn't giving Jarvis a chance to think or go all that through. It's like, no, I need you. You're the witness of all of this. And he was really pushing it. I was looking to the shiny screen where we got to see all of the different Avengers that were on the team over the years. Because I do love that kind of stuff.
Oh God, yeah. And again, this is a cool usage of the anniversary kind of episode and issue and all that. So yeah, this was neat. This opening panel, and again, with him throwing out there, if I'm not mistaken, you have a Norse god on your team, which nowadays, now we know why. Like, oh, okay. But again, at the time, I read it just as, okay, this is a neat transition into the next team they're going to be showing us with Thor in it. And again, this was a flip the page, and I'm like, okay, I don't ever remember that costume. That's Wasp, but I don't ever remember her looking like that. So these next couple pages were kind of cool seeing them do their thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's with her, it's more than a costume, the change that's there, which is very unique with the Wasp. This is obviously, post Secret Wars and, far down the road for us. Compared to a recent reading that we've done with the Avengers. But it's interesting to see this team where you've got, they're going up against the Krees and the Skulls right there. And you've got members of the team that have a rich history with them. I like that they're acknowledging that there were members of the team that didn't. And they're trying to bring them up to speed on how to be effective in the field with the enemies. I love squads that do that. Like, I thought that writing was really strong where those little pieces added a reality to the whole thing to me that I thought you don't see that very often. When it happens in moments like this, it just added a sense to me of these are events that are really unfolding. These are fully realized people that are recognizing that, like, hey, because of the fact that these villains are popping up at such random, you haven't encountered them yet. Here's something you need to think about as Black Widow as you're, going up against them. I loved that stuff. I thought those little tiny attentions to details added more of a sense of this being a living, breathing, thriving world, which was that's something that Mark Waid does organically in his writing, and I really appreciated the choice there.
Oh God, yeah, nice beauty of the chaos that is combat. When you get a team that works well together, they can lay it out for you nicely. And they did a brilliant job with jumping through multiple members of the team, giving them each some neat spotlights, and you get some cool moments. That super chrono punch that knocks Giant Man through all of his iterations, that was really neat. I love that one.
Especially when you've got like this, he's going up against a villain who is like an amalgamation of multiple different villains. wait, Kang, no, Ramatut, no, Scarlet Centurion, Immortus, all 4 rolled into, and seeing the punch, I geek out at the Yellow Jacket outfit because I did read the Yellow Jacket stuff and what happened with the turn. And it was cool to see that. Did you read any of that with Yellow Jacket and what happened?
I don't remember. I know what happened.
Yeah.
But I don't remember actually reading the issues. So I think it was just learning through life and interactions and other later issues where they talk about it and whatnot. But I don't actually remember reading it.
So
I may have, to be honest with you, and I just forgot. But I know what happens with him.
It came up a lot in West Coast Avengers, which led me to go back and seek out the issues where it actually happened. I always thought the Yellow Jacket costume was cool, too. I just thought there's something about the design. I thought it was just a really good costume design. So I'm like, okay, I want to go read some of this. So I read the issues. That might be something that'll be fun to do at some point in time, too, do a little look at Yellow Jacket. There's so much that I want to do, but they're all good storylines. Captain America's shield, when it comes flying on through during the Kree sequence, I thought was really awesome. I love it's funny, like over the years I've read really cool runs of Captain America. He's a character that I wished I had a larger budget growing up because I love the character. I absolutely love Captain America's storytelling when I've had the opportunity to jump on when new writers come on board and they're doing some new initiative with them. He was somebody, I referenced that annual with Wolverine in it, where the two of them were going at it. I remember reading that annual and loving it and then really wanting to read more Captain America. I loved the U.S. agent stuff, where Cap had given up... the Cap had given up the mantle and he was fighting to get, the title of Captain America back, how that worked. I loved that whole story arc. There's so many great Captain America storylines that I loved. The Brubaker stuff, the Winter Soldier stuff and things like that. I think it's just all outstanding examples of just great Captain America. So he's a character that I don't know why over the years I have not followed him monthly. Other than the fact that it was financial. Because every time I see him come on the scene, I adore him. I just think he's just really, really terrific. And I think in comics, he's one of the consummate leaders. I think when he shows up on the scene, he commands attention. And there's something in the way that writers and artists, I should say, because it really is a marriage between the two, manage to convey a presence of the man when he shows up on scene. It's pretty consistent. There's very few over the years have gotten it wrong. Look at that sequence where he threw the shield and even he's catching it back. Look at Cap's, where he is and the way people are almost flocking around him.
Yeah.
That's just, there's a presence there that is just really unique, and I just really loved all of that. It just fit for me. This is the Avengers. This is Captain America. When he shows up on the scene, doesn't matter what the team configuration is, whether he's the leader or not, people just naturally gravitate around him. And this is something we saw in Secret Wars with a whole mishmash of characters, and it's so cool to see it right here with the Avengers. Everyone's looking towards him and flocking right at him and looking for his guidance as far as what we're going to do next. And that's, I think, what separates the Avengers from a lot of teams is their ability to rally. Even if they're losing, team, let's rally. Let's come back with a new play. It's almost just like a great football game.
Yes.
Time out. Let's go talk. Let's go back on the field, and we are now going to win this.
Yes. This is definitely rally time. This is we're starting the fourth quarter now. This is our quarter. Let's take it down. Let's take them down. I love that. Yeah, and that's something Cap always just, every time I ever read a Captain America comic, even if he's a minor character in the issue and it's somebody else's main title, he always stands out for me. And I had a period where I was regularly reading the U.S. agent stuff. I was regularly reading that stuff.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, I love that stuff. And then again, that was college years. And then after college, I just stopped reading comics. And then when I started to come back, I came back more into DC and not on, the Marvel. And there was just a lot of just, And again, he's one of those characters I wish I had just continued reading him throughout and not stopped reading him. When I look at my collection, I'm right now trying to get it organized. Part of me wants to start taking some of the titles that I have and just completing the runs and just start going to different comic shops, going to conventions being one of those guys with that list, printed out list and just marking off, okay, I got this issue. And Cap is one of those characters. Part of me would like to do that. Depending on what I have in the collection, it's probably going to be X titles and Superman, titles. But part of me would like to look at what I have on Cap and figure out, can I fill the Cap run?
Dude, I am buying so much physical right now. It's crazy. I started buying these bookshelves for my basement. Like, I have a room with a pool table in the back. And I found these great 3-shelf bookshelves that, like, you can, like, they're perfect for, like, collected editions. They're perfect for, these, like, the new DC line that's out there, DC's Finest. I started getting a couple of those. I just grabbed a couple to kind of see what... you got to, like, physically have it in your hand and kind of go, do I like the format? Well, I got that Legion one, that Jim Shooter one that just came out from that DC Finest line, just because I never read those stories, the Jim Shooter ones. So I'm like, well, this would be a good one to grab. Grab a book that, like, I really want to read the stories, and it's not just another collection of something that I already have. So I grabbed that. I've been reading it. It's a great format, and I'm like, no, man, I'm really liking this format, and, like, what am I gonna do with so? But I grabbed the shelves because what I was doing is I have this crawl space that it's perfect for. It's dry, it's clean. I have a ton of, like, archive stuff, like when my father passed. There's a lot of things that. I've got a ton of things, like, representing my father in my house, but, I don't want to make my entire house a shrine to my dad, but there's also stuff that, like, you can't throw it away. You know what I mean? So I've got it in my crawl space. Maybe the grandkids will want it at some point in time. My brother, there were things that maybe he didn't want at the time when my father passed, but I've got the space for it, so I'm keeping it, if that makes any sense.
Oh, 100%.
And then, so that's about, like, half of the crawl space is that kind of stuff. Then the other half is it fits drawer boxes really well.
Nice.
So I've got, like, drawer boxes in there. The only thing I was doing, though, is putting, like, omnibuses and trades and stuff like that in the drawer boxes too, just for a spot to put them. So these shelves now are to bring that stuff out, because I put in, like, the way the pool table room is set up, there's a space for, like, I've got a chair, like and then I've got an ottoman in there, and I put a speaker back there for, like, when we play pool, and it's become, like, a really cool reading room. So, like, when I'm not playing pool back there, sometimes it's nice to go back there and sit in the quiet. One of the cats likes to go back there and lay down anyway. So it's kind of like this nice quiet spot where I can throw on some of the film soundtracks without words and just read some comics. So I got tired of, like, going into the crawl space to grab, like, the omnibuses and trades. And because sometimes I like to read paper. I'm in the mood to, like, enough of the iPad already. I'd like the tactile, physical nature of everything. And so I brought out, like, some of these omnibus and things that were sitting back there, or the absolutes or those type of pieces, and reading them. And that's what this whole space has come. But when you were talking about, like, expanding your collection, as I'm freeing up space in the drawer boxes, I've been doing that too. Like, when I go to cons, I'll grab the alternate covers and things now, except a lot of those I'm framing them, just because the artist is there. So I'll get it signed, and I like putting that on the wall. But I'm trying to fill in runs too. Runs of things that, like, I thought it was a good idea at the time to sell and pare back, and I wish I didn't. Like, I'm doing dumb things now, and I'm like rebuying some things that I probably should never parted with to begin with, and having fun with it though. I've got such a weird hybrid collection now of, I'm buying digital each month, I'm buying paper each month, and I'm buying collected editions each month. But what I am doing, and I'm being much more cognizant of it now, is I'm not overlapping. Like, I'm not buying 3 and 4 of something. I'm buying one version of it. So that way I'm able to do some of what you're talking about. Like if I'm all in on paper for something, I'm all in on paper and I want to get that run fully completed. If I'm all in digital for it, I'm happy to be all in digital for it. Usually in those cases, if it's something that I have digitally that I want a physical, I usually am doing like your omnibuses, your trades, your collected editions that usually celebrate, like, because I like the slipcase stuff and things like that. Yeah. And I'm grabbing that. But I'm with you on, like, I'm loving the Hunt again. Like, I forgot how much I enjoyed the Hunt because I went like really heavy digital focus for a while where it was just digital. And now I'm back into the quest is when I go to a convention, it's nice to stop by a table and go, oh, they got bins. They got dollar bins. They go, the dollar bins are getting a little more expensive now, but they're still like the dollar bin concept. They're still cost effective. So I start going through some of those bins and I've found some really good comics at a lot of these conventions. It's the Fan Expo Cleveland and GalaxyCon Columbus, which are the two that I hit this year. I did some damage, but nice. In the best. But I really feel like I got some good bargains. So I walked out spending more than I intended, but I feel like I got things at a really good price, and that's why I did, and got to fill in part of my quest. The quest is fun. And I'm with you on Captain America. Captain America is one of those characters. We're talking a lot about the U.S. Agent piece with John Walker. And that John Walker story arc, if you only know the John Walker story arc from TV, do yourself a favor and seek it out. Either, read it out. Like if you're getting the Marvel Unlimited app, read it on there. Seek out the trades. There's a lot of collected editions of that original storyline of what happened there. The original storyline was outstanding. I really, really enjoyed that. It might be something we do eventually on the show, just because I felt like Cap versus Cap was a great storyline.
Yes, that was cool. And again, I do chuckle, and I'm pretty sure other people are. Every time we keep saying, we got to do that on the show. We got to do that on the show. We've got so much stuff planned to do on the show that it's outstanding.
But that's what comics are, right? I mean, if we were talking a DC topic right now, we'd be saying the same thing. There's so many storylines. You think you've done so much in like over 19 years of podcasting now, and we have. But when you do these kind of cover-to-cover looks at things, they take a while, to do them. And it's fun to be able to realize that we have just gotten started. It's why I always laugh at the people that are like, you guys love everything. We have far from covered everything.
I know.
And we're more than likely, we focused on the stories that we're most excited to cover. So I'm not going to go like, geez, I got a great idea. This story's like a root canal. Why don't we cover that? Let's take 3 weeks and cover this story that is pained. I don't really have an example of a story like that, by the way. I want to be very, very clear. That's just not, I'm fortunate enough that I've picked up comics in such a way that I can't remember the last time I read something where I'm like, man, this is excruciating. And I'm sorry if you are listening to this and you're going, oh, I have. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. But that's just not been my experience. But geez, Louise, you and I just through this episode of Organically, you're right. It's funny. We've shouted out, I think, like five or six different story arcs that we got to get to that. We got to do that. Wait, Onslaught in and of itself, Jim, I think would take us 2 months to cover.
I know.
It was huge.
Yeah. I think, again, that is a story I really would like to cover. Mm-hmm. And just like when we first started doing this, the first thing I said to you was, no more mutants. I 100% want to cover that, I'd love to cover that story. So there's a bunch of stuff that we could cover, and I would love to somehow figure out a way we can get to it.
By the way, for anybody listening to this episode right now, I like mutants. I understand Jim doesn't. I don't know why Jim doesn't want to talk about mutants anymore. I want to talk mutants. This is a mutant-free zone. We are going to talk X-Men on this show. Jim just won't be happy about it. So it'll be... No, House of M. You're right. We should definitely take a look at it at some point. Dr. Spectrum. I mentioned it earlier that he's kind of like the Green Lantern archetype for the Squadron Supreme. Kind of. I mean, it's there's definitely clearly references there. That is, I loved seeing him in Hyperion in this story. just because I have such a fondness for the characters. That's a maxi series, Jim. I'm promising you, we have to cover Squadron Supreme. Well, that is a mad geek out for me because I read that monthly as it was coming out, and that is an example of some really great Marvel.
Well, and it was funny because these are the pages that I was going to say, hey, who are these guys? Because I honestly, if I've ever read them, I do not remember at all. I know I never read Dr. Spectrum, the Imperium, and then there was the Speed guy. I'm like, who's that? I don't even know his name.
Wizard.
It is Wizard. Okay. I thought maybe because he said, "Wouldn't you say Wizard?" And I'm like,
no, that actually is Hyperion, Dr. Spectrum, and Wizard. Those are actually who they are. Okay. They're all featured in Squadron Supreme. It was a 12-issue maxi series, and I jumped on that one because clearly it was like Marvel's version of DC, and I was like, oh, this looks intriguing. I grabbed the first issue of it, and I was hooked. But it spun out of the Avengers. They were an Avengers opponent that were given this maxi series, and the maxi series focuses exclusively on them, on their world. So it's just really, really tight and really well put together. We'll definitely have to cover it because I think you'd have a lot of fun with it because it would all be all new to you.
Oh God, yeah, I 100% want to cover that.
So the team gets taken out here. Actually, this is working. Loki's plan is working to a certain extent. Like Cap is reacting to all of this, but take a look at the Avengers who are down. I mean, each one of these battles is having an effect, and they're getting overwhelmed by numbers. So just when it looks like they have been able to maybe, take some ground, they've got a numbers game into their advantage, they're all of a sudden swarmed by, this dark matter reforming. Now they're lava men and they're facing against the lava men. This storyline keeps going, and now we're starting to see the cracks. Because this is where, as we flip to this next page with Typhon, I will admit I wasn't 100% thinking he was the bad guy yet, but I was starting to question him heavily.
Yes. In
my first read through. I'm like sitting there like, wait a minute. Hang on a minute. This is getting much, much more intense. And so what's going on here? I'm not going to say that like I knew he was the bad guy here and all those kind of pieces, but I will admit things were feeling a little weird. And I feel like that was deliberate. That was an example of, I think, great storytelling where, as a reader, we're starting to maybe feel where Jarvis is at this moment. And that was what I liked the most about it. I felt like we were going along on that ride with Jarvis. And yes. I felt like as Jarvis was starting to question things, we as the reader were starting to question things. And I just think that's really good pacing in a storyline when you're kind of going along with the character. I love character connection. And I think your quality writers are able to give you that character connection. And I will say, if there's one character I connected the most with in this, it was Jarvis because of just how this story was tailored. And I like that. I liked that aspect. I think we all want to be it's become popular in the movies with the man in the chair, but I think this made us feel like we could be Jarvis. The way this story was handled. I thought that accessibility to this universe is really, really cool. When in the previous issue, I'm like, I wonder how many people actually wanted to be Snapper Carr. And I don't hate Snapper Carr, but it's like the whole snapping thing. I could see how like that. It was probably super cool when Justice League first came out, to have that, human that like everybody could be. The problem was the snapping. I see why they eventually wrote Snapper out.
Yeah. But again, as we said last week, I wouldn't mind seeing a Snapper-like character back in the Justice League, working with them. And the stuff we're seeing with Jarvis is one of the reasons why I like having that character. Someone who's not a hero, who's not a superhuman person, who is the confidant. It's stuff we love about Alfred. It's stuff we love about, Gordon being around them. Having a human person, a normal person involved in some of the craziness does give you that good connection. And like you, this page was the beginning of the, dude, back off. What the heck, man? Kind of moment. I wasn't thinking he was a villain, but I 100% was seeing the intensity that he was going on. And again, great story, great artwork. I love them showing Jarvis sweating there, getting worried about his friends, about the people he cares about. Completely did a brilliant job in getting us questioning the hero here.
Yeah, and his continued push to keep getting him to think more and to put more on screen, to think of more. Those pieces were you get to see the building blocks of this. I thought it was super cool how this was laid out. It's funny. The Snapper Car pieces, I was looking at it. I didn't dislike Snapper Car in the anniversary issue we did last episode. I really liked it there. I thought that was actually a really good use of Snapper Car. This is a tremendous use of Jarvis here. We start to see the screen come to life where we see Iron Man versus Ultron, and we get to see the continued fights with Scarlet Witch, and we get to see Wasp continuing in the fights as we're seeing more and more of the Rogues Gallery being spotlighted here. And again, the numbers game, when we're seeing Giant Man get, knocked down by sheer overwhelming numbers. I mean, this is Giant Man. Giant Man's big. To see him overwhelmed and being pummeled, and Thor being taken down, Vision, Captain America looking like he's about ready to be overwhelmed. That stuff was all just, I think, really well done to show how Loki's plan was really working here. The idea of getting Jarvis to think more and to delve deeper into the Rogues Gallery and to bring more, because now you're reacting to, just when I've finally gotten a strategy to handle my opponents, they've all changed.
Yep.
So I'm preparing myself to deal with Hyperion. Now I'm dealing with Ultron. It's just a very different way of thinking, because their weaknesses are going to be different. Their way of attacking are going to be different. It was really compelling. This was a compelling way to do this, and a great way to give us a tour de force of Avengers history in an anniversary issue, which this was a clever story.
Well, and you got to love the strategery here, because, the heroes are being attacked on all fronts, but that's not the only attack that's going on. They've got that darkness that's also starting to swallow the whole city. These heroes, these villains that are attacking the heroes, are just the distraction. And I love the fact that they're starting, that a couple of the heroes, because you got Vision, being one of the first people saying, wait a minute, no chance to focus on the threat of the darkness itself. There's even another threat on top of that, giving us a clue that, hey, all these villains, these are just, this is the decoy, guys. This is your real threat. This darkness is your real threat. And I love the fact that we get that, and then the lead into other heroes who are affected by this. When we start seeing Fantastic Four, Spidey, Black Panther, Submariner, even She-Hulk throwing down with these other villains that are popping up all over the place. I love this, man.
So I was doing some research on the Wasp. We took a little bit of a break, and I was taking a look at that. And Wasp's storyline is an intriguing one. This morph of the Wasp came from the fact that she was mortally wounded. I'm not going to say by who, because it's kind of like a major spoiler. But in order to heal her injuries, Hank Pym redundantly exposed her to the procedure that originally gave her powers. And this caused a transformation that made her this wasp-like form, but healed her, gave her additional powers, that type of thing, and got her back rejoining the team. So interesting roller coaster of a storyline for Janet and how she evolved into this particular version of the character. I just thought it was intriguing because, why is she all of a sudden look this way? There's actually a storyline reason for it. It was actually pretty significant for what happened with the character, and I was intrigued by it. I love stuff like this. I love when a storyline gets me to start asking questions about certain characters. The cameos in this don't end. I mean, we get to see Spider-Man, and that's not Peter Parker. Well, he thought he was Peter Parker, but it was not Peter Parker. That was the clone, who was Spider-Man at the time. That outfit, and the giveaway is the outfit. That particular version of the Spider-Man outfit was when Peter Parker had given up the mantle, and he was letting his clone take over. He thought his clone was the real Spider-Man, if that makes sense, and that he was the clone. So it was. There's a whole timey-wimey stuff going on there as well that I really, I love that stuff. I read a lot of that stuff with Spider-Man. So it was interesting to see the time placement of this with the Avengers Reservists. And everyone is being shown the Fantastic Four. The members of the Fantastic Four were Avengers Reservists. Black Panther. We get to see Namor. We get to see She-Hulk. All of these characters that were Avengers Reservists end up they're being attacked during this. And they're taking part of this storyline, which was great. That's how widespread this was. Loki was going after everybody. Yeah. Like he wasn't just going after the A team. He was going after the B squad, the C squad, like every single squad. The I'm on vacation squad. He went after everybody. It was the brilliance of Loki's scope and scale in this plan was he was going after everybody. And it was a great way to have character cameos in this for a reason. Like, everything felt tight, like it was supposed to be there. It was supposed to happen. This is a great way to do an anniversary issue.
Oh, God, yeah. And again, I loved, I didn't know that. I know the clone story. I know the broad strokes of the clone story and all that stuff with Spidey's, but I didn't know that wasn't Peter. So it was kind of neat seeing that, and then seeing the Fantastic Four, seeing Black Panther, Namor, and She-Hulk. I was like, this is a really cool, nice splash of a page to have on there. Again, throwing out nods to all the people who are associated with the Avengers, and then you flip to the page, and again, I multiple times talked about the power of the page flip. I love how it then flips to all of these people are depending on one man. And you flip and you see Jarvis is like, I can't let them down. They're depending on me. And just as he's trying to focus, you see Loki just start putting the pressure on him about because Jarvis was out. Well, they're first villain. No need to go back there, and just completely attacks him on that. I love the look on Jarvis's face.
Yes.
Because I had the exact same look on mine going, oh, this is the villain. Oh, man, that is awesome. Now, I didn't know. I still didn't know it was Loki at the time. Because I didn't know Loki was their first villain. But the look on Jarvis's face is the same one I had. I'm like, this is a bad guy. Oh, that is brilliant. I 100% knew that. And then once you start diving into who the first villain was, I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
I love, though, that Jarvis caught on, and he's now insulting him. He's playing the game. He's sitting there saying, I get it. Understandable, really. I mean, it's an embarrassment. And, I mean, sitting there, the pieces he's throwing out there, a cheap prankster. Oh, yes, and what did Wasp call him? A cream puff. Norris god of hotfoots. Perhaps you've heard of him. The fool's name was Loki. And I love that Jarvis has got him at this point. He knew what was going on. And Loki knew at this point. He's like, okay, this dude's poking me because he's figured it out. But it totally put that piece down there. I want an Avengers badge.
Yes.
Because those things do all... Not only can you tap it and, it'll bring people running, but, you can... It, actually, that technology allows them to see people and talk to them, because there's later on when they're talking to Crystal through the badge. These badges are way cool. Forget smartphones, man. The Avengers had it back in the day. Yeah. They were doing FaceTime before FaceTime was cool, and it was really, really neat to see how these badges do all these really cool things. That is one of the great things about tech in comics and in film and stuff like that, is when it pushes the envelope and continues to push the envelope. They're doing things in this that are still cutting edge today. There are badges that you're using nowadays that can do this. The tech is still too small that they've gotten this. Our phones do a lot and we're close, but it's still much bigger tech than what he's holding in his hand. I loved that.
On one hand, I agree with you, but on the other hand, look at your smartwatch. Your smartwatch connects to your phone. You could talk through your watch.
Yeah, but you're not seeing people's images and having direct conversations where you're actually seeing their image explode onto the smartwatch. Where there's not a camera.
We're not there yet.
Yeah. In their badge, dude, they're able to two-way communication. They're being able to, it's got a camera and they're able to see each other. Like, it's still, that tech is much more advanced than your smartwatches. Still.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're not there yet, but we're going to catch up to the Avengers.
Yeah. The Avengers of 96.
Right. Exactly.
That's my point. We're now in 2025, and we still haven't caught up to the Avengers of 96. I love that. I think that to me is when you've got some really clever technology being used that feels grounded and realistic, but still feels cutting edge and advanced. Imagine you could replace your phone and your smartwatch with an Avengers badge. You can't do that yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Well, we did catch up to Star Trek, though. So that's the thing that was one of the big things I wanted. I wanted a communicator, and I've got that now. So I'm good there.
Well, it's not like the interstellar communicator. Wait, here's the thing. I don't know about how your cell phone works. My reception is not Star Trek communicator. Like, they still have got the edge on that, too. They seem to be able to flip those things open pretty much anywhere. Unless Khan was blocking them.
Right.
Maybe that's what it is with certain cell phone reception. It's Khan.
Khan!
Yeah. But this leading to this, now the Avengers coming back on the scene and fighting Loki was great. Because he's got this giant vortex of power. I love the whole Avengers Assemble piece, and I like that he's manipulating them. He's going after their weaknesses. He's going after their psychological, because Loki's always a battle of the mind as much as a physical battle, right? Maybe more than anything else. This is where we get to see the adamantium battle between the adamantium statues and them. This is what I thought this was so funny. He brings them to life. It was clever. I loved what he did, but I'm sitting here like, guys, why are we using adamantium for this purpose? I'm still stuck on that. But I loved it. I thought it led to a great battle and a reason why, why wouldn't Loki use an adamantium statue against them? It gives him a ready-made villains team. It's continuing what he was doing with the dark matter before, and in a way that's much cooler. And we got a chance to see we got to see Scarlet Witch's power, where sometimes that hex magic that she uses kind of goes wrong because she melts them, but the liquid metal version of them is still alive and still attacking them.
Yes.
I thought that was kind of cool. It actually went all the Terminator. that part was awesome.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat, the layout. I love in the middle of it, they're talking like, they admit we're up against an indestructible team. They're talking about the Hulk. Fighting the Hulk would normally take hours. Yeah. An adamantium Hulk, I don't even want to think about that. And I love just the fact that, this is really, they're up against their backs up against the wall. And it is up to Witch to actually do her mojo, her magic against magic. And I think that was a really neat usage of the fact that, you've got this unknown versus another unknown quality. It's that final gut check of the hero. Can we make this happen? And even when they win, in that they take out the adamantium, the adamantium statues, the adamantium's still coming at them. So okay, we just won, but we now have another problem that we have to face that's just as dangerous. How do we deal with this? I loved how this battle kept playing out, and they're on top of things. Oh yeah, we also have this massive vortex. How do we deal with that? Now, I loved how they're sitting there dealing. We've got this problem, this problem, this problem, and we're just like, okay, let's do this. This was a really, again, neat moment of a hero team needed to work together. And it was Jarvis who brings the hero team back to where they needed to be. I love this story.
Cap rally crying, though, and then reminding them, though, that he's trying to split our ranks again. And I like that he's, the terminology that Cap uses. The military approach that Cap uses when he is a squad leader is something that's so cool. He knows the mountains that the Avengers can move when we're working together as a team. And then you get to see that moment where they're all unleashing together. And that was just way cool. I just loved the way this whole thing played out. Seeing Loki get turned into the statue. And it's so interesting with Thor's interactions of him. You get the fact that this is my brother. And I love that Thor always has those moments where he's a tragic prisoner of his own twisted malice. Like, it bothers Thor because it's his brother. And I loved I love the tiny details of that. That part is so cool. I totally forgot about this costume of Thor's. He was in like this outfit. It's such an interesting look because I'm used to Thor. Yes, there's variations on the Thor outfit, but this outfit was drastically different than anything I was used to seeing from Thor.
This was like a more superhero outfit versus the Norse god outfit.
And like he's very into his abs because we got them way out in the open. It's kind of like, listen, this outfit's got cooling built right in.
Well, hey, dude, if you had abs like that, I'd show them off too.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with this choice. I'm sitting here, I'm like, really, it's an interesting sort of outfit. The conclusion, though, we get to see the epilogue and the wrap up and the leading into Onslaught was really cool. This is pivotal because the Onslaught storyline and everything that happens winds up leading to the whole Heroes Reborn thing. Like this is a very, very strong time for change for the Avengers. This leads to big, big things happening in the Marvel Universe. So this issue is really the start of something big for the Avengers. Yeah, it's a great anniversary issue with all of that, but this ending is actually leading to very, very big things, not just for the Avengers, but for the whole of the Marvel Universe. Yeah, this storyline with Onslaught wound up being a big thing. So we'll see. This is something we'll have to eventually touch on. I'm glad we got a chance to talk to the Avengers.
Yeah. And I love they have this roll call at the end here. That was something that, I was like, you get done. Again, had a wonderful issue. The Xavier going nuts, okay. And then you flip the page like, oh, this is cool. This is the original, the founding members then. First recruit, Captain America. Second recruit, one. And they start breaking down when they became a part of the team. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that a bunch of the reformed villains, they say, this is a reformed villain, who joined the team, like with Quicksilver. And there's a couple later on. And they even mentioned when the character died, killed in action. And I was like, this for me was a really neat couple pages.
Or if they're with a different team currently.
Yeah.
Or even if in the case of like Hellcat, current fate is unknown. I really like, there's the little thought balloons. Marvel's always done this really well. Did you ever get the Marvel handbook, the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, those issues when those are coming out? Was that a thing you collected?
I never got that. I got the DC side of the Who's Who, but not the Marvel stuff.
So I actually got the Marvel one first. It was I ended up grabbing that, and I was getting it monthly as it was coming out. And they did a couple different versions of that. The original one, when it came out, was just way cool. It did stuff like this with much more expanded details. And I loved every bit of that. I like these kind of pieces when they do it because back in the day, if you didn't have the access to reading everything like we do now, Who's Who, like you mentioned, and the official handbook of the Marvel Universe was really the way to get the continuity backstory of characters. So I always love when Marvel went and did stuff like this and DC went and did stuff like this because it gave everybody a chance to even the playing field when collected editions weren't really a thing. Want to talk some Fantastic Four?
Yes, please.
Our next discussion is going to be a Fantastic Four 300. Roger Stern is the writer. John and Sal Buscema are the artists. John Workman on letters. Glynis Oliver on the colors. Don Daly is the editor. Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief. Special thanks to Peter Sanderson. And apologies for any name butchery. This is a classic, so it's fitting to be talking about this right now in light of the fact that we so recently did Secret Wars. So in Secret Wars, we saw Thing leave the team and She-Hulk take over. And She-Hulk was around for a long time on the team. This is now, the Thing has come back. And, She-Hulk has still been a member of the team, but the Thing is back on Earth. The Thing is back interacting with a part of the team. There is a wedding that's about to happen. And it's Johnny Storm getting married to Alicia Masters, who traditionally has always been the girlfriend and, we always thought was going to be with the Thing. I loved the fact that we always had in this team that relationship drama, the relationship issues, the growth of the characters. The Thing to me was always an interesting character because of the fact that, in this, outside of this outward, like really strong shell, is this very sensitive man on the inside, right? Johnny was always this brash kind of double gun kind of, I'm this handsome college guy. I've got it all together. I'm the Human Torch. My powers are cool. I'm just cool. He's not a bad guy. Johnny Storm's a good guy, on those ends. But, life for him is a tad bit easier, shall we say, than it is for the Thing. But with him, it was always about maturing, right? Growing older, getting caught up to everybody, especially getting caught up to Reed and Sue. He was always the younger brother, the guy who needed to get it together and a little bit more serious. This is a Johnny Storm who's evolving and growing, who's becoming more mature. Is he, ready to get married? And what does marriage mean? And that type of thing. I loved this relationship between Johnny and Alicia. I was always torn about it because of the fact that I'm a Ben Grimm guy. I love The Thing. And I loved, ultimately you want to see these two, you wanted to see him and Alicia get together. But this was a great way to add to that drama, right? Where it's like, now his girl's with Johnny, and you get why. You get why the two of them have built a relationship together along the way. And I loved everything about this issue. When I selected this, I didn't realize that this was the issue that I was selecting. I was looking for a done in one. So, some of the other anniversary issues were like the conclusion of a story arc. So I'm like, well, let's grab one that is definitely one that we can just do for this episode and really kind of embrace the whole issue. And this fits that. But I love the opening with Johnny's example of a wedding is Reed and Sue's. And what happened with Reed and Sue's was chaos because of the fact that everybody and their uncle knew about Reed and Sue's wedding. He's trying to keep this under wraps. So when the Daily Bugle is posting the information about the wedding, he's like, Robertson, what gives, man? Like, do you know what this is going to do to me? And you can't argue with what Robbie's doing over at the Daily Bugle. He's like, dude, this is a story. If we don't get it out there, somebody's going to get it out there. And Johnny's even, referencing the fact that, like, this is a responsible journalist, at least, on this end, that's, he's not out to hurt us or anything like that in the process. But man, now the Thing's going to find out about this. And I've got to be thinking about that particular piece as we're going forward. I loved every bit of the opening leading to Yancey Street. I just thought that was something that this is an example of how you pace out an issue. And if you're somebody who hasn't been reading the Fantastic Four in a while, but are grabbing it because of the cover, where it's like, wow, it's a wedding issue, it's an anniversary issue, let me go jump on this one. This brings you up to speed really, really quick with the opening sequences with Johnny and the opening sequences with Ben. This is a great opening.
Oh, God, yeah. And again, with me and Fantastic Four, I had okay knowledge on them just because of, family and friends and whatnot. But with the end of Secret Wars, when Ben stays on the planet, and Johnny then, while Ben's not around, he and Alicia get together, I was pissed at Johnny. I was like, you son of a gun. Yeah, what the heck is wrong with you, man? That's wrong. And I still do remember, when I first, either read the issues or heard about it or, all that stuff, being really mad at Johnny because here's this pretty boy who's stealing Ben's girl, and 100% was just like, man, you jerk, and it's funny. I never read the wedding issue.
Oh, really?
I knew, again, my Fantastic Four reading wasn't like a constant, it was a bit here, a bit there, kind of stuff. So I never really read this wedding issue. So again, this is another issue, first time reading it, but I knew that along the path, obviously, that Ben got cool with them being together. And I was like, so I stopped hating Johnny Storm. But there was a period in time when I was vividly just hated the Human Torch. And I was like, that jerk, he's ruining the Fantastic Four. He's, and again, it was all that kind of that venom, toward Johnny Storm. So it was kind of neat reading this issue because you do see, everything you talked about earlier about just the growth and maturity of Johnny. And I do wonder if I had actually read this issue, back in the day, how much anger, resentment would I hold for Storm? Because I do have, I did have a lot of resentment still throughout time, just because I knew in the comic book he stole Ben's girl. So like when the movies and they're showing just a little bits and banters back and forth between them, and they introduce her to into the movie universe, I was like, man, they better not do where Johnny steals her. I'll be mad. And I can remember thinking when that very first Fantastic Four movie came out, and I was like, they better not do that storyline, because that would have, if I would have seen that on the screen, you would have heard the young version of me just come out ranting about the fact that Johnny Storm steals Ben's girl. So I love the fact that I got a little closure here, seeing the maturity of Johnny, seeing how Ben worked through this process, and everything you said about when he went down to Yancey Street. 100% agree with you. I loved seeing Ben just kind of, you don't want to say sulking, because he's got a lot on his plate. He's got a lot emotionally, mentally, just everything on him. One, he is the Thing. So that in itself is a difficult life for Ben. On top of that, the one girl that he had that didn't care about him being the Thing, who saw the cool guy he was on the inside, is no longer his. And oh yeah, she's with his best friend, with his teammate, so there's so much going on. And I loved the street kids, just how the Yancey Street Gang, was just like, we got to snap the Thing out of this. We got to get in. They're antagonizing him, provoking the Thing, doing what they can just to get the Thing to react, just to get the Thing to actually be the Thing again. And I loved seeing that. Again, it's the respect that a lot of people have towards the Thing, that he doesn't realize he has that respect. And I loved seeing that in these just couple quick pages.
It was really, really great because so much of it's real. Like, your anger towards the Human Torch and all that, that's what, like, in situations like that, no matter how well you try to handle it. I had a buddy of mine recently who got together with another friend of ours, and the relationship went horribly wrong. To this day, I don't know, nor do I care to know the whole story, but the parts that I know, I wish I didn't know, if that makes any sense. But what ends up happening when, people enter relationships like that, first of all, they couldn't help it. The two of them fell for each other, and that just kind of went the way that it did. They had the intention throughout the process of keeping the friends out of it. Tried to the best effort until unfortunately, it bled over. And it's an example of like how real this story is, because Johnny and Alicia and Ben, these are all characters who we've been following for years and years and years, whether you're following them casually or you're following them closely. The thing that works so well about this story is this is what happens in real life. Sometimes nobody's wrong in the situation, but when you've got these entanglements that happen, I always go off of the guy code that you try not to date people that your friends have dated, those type of things. You know what I mean? You try not to do that. But sometimes in life, those things happen, it's when you're not sure you should be dating, or you're not sure about those pieces, that, you don't go and date that person. This was an example. The example I'm referencing is an example of a friend of mine who I love, who wasn't ready to date people. Got into a hot and heavy relationship with somebody who was a very close friend, and it just went horribly wrong. The after effects of that relationship being horribly wrong is it changed things. That happens. It's just part of life. This really does change the dynamic of the Fantastic Four when you're looking at it. And I love that. I love the reality of that. Why are they the comics' first family? Because of the fact that this is impacting that family. I love when writing is so strong that the characters feel real. when they make you think about, like, okay, how could I as a friend better handle the situation that I'm even talking about? You know, I mean, I was reading this and thinking through that situation and being like, this just happened over the last year. There's parts of it where as a friend, I'm like, I could have been more supportive this way. Nothing that they did anything wrong, but you like look at areas where I could have done things differently with both friends who were involved in this, and maybe wouldn't have changed their relationship went, but it would have changed the nature of being a supportive friend. Does that make sense? In that process? Yeah. I love when you read comics, you watch a movie, you watch a television series, and it's so well written that you connect with the characters in a very real way, and it makes you think through your own choices in similar situations. And I feel like the Yancey Street Gang, the sequence you're mentioning, made me feel like, wow, you know, like what could I have done to, you know, better ease this for both people? I love like little bits and pieces like that were funny. I didn't know that like dropping an egg on one of them or garbage or, you know, throwing dummies in front of them would have been the way to go bowling. Was probably the thing that I probably should have done with one of them. I honestly, going back, I didn't do any of these things, Jim. I will own it. And I should have. I should have taken the right steps to make that happen. I have garbage here at home. It would have been so easy for me to dump this on one of the two of them to see if it would have helped bring them out of their funk. And eggs, I probably, because eggs are so expensive now, I probably would not have dropped an egg. Just because of the fact that, like, that's a pretty costly choice. But, you know, dummies. I know a lot of dummies.
We know a lot of dummies, yeah. And, you know, I'll be honest with you. I think I know who you're talking about. And dumping garbage on him would have probably made him laugh, you know?
It probably would have. Yes, very, very much so. So it's one of those pieces where, you know, as this could have, art could have imitated life, or life could have imitated art, I guess, in this case, because it would have been the reverse. But I really loved everything about that story playing out. And then Alicia's wedding fitting was because in a day and age, we see this with our celebrities nowadays. And you think in 96, it wasn't quite as prevalent as it is now. You know, we were starting to get there, but boy, would this be true today. This would have been all over the place in an age of cell phones where the She-Hulk and Sue Storm are there with Johnny Storm's wife-to-be. This would have been all over the media. And so the way that this played out, I think, was just so reminiscent of what today would be. I feel like this feels very, very contemporary now, this storyline.
I'll be 8-9, you know.
Well, wait, what year was this? It wasn't quite 96. I don't know. I'm throwing 96 out there. And it wasn't. Keep going. I'll find out what year this actually was that was playing.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I loved this sequence. Because, again, there was a couple cool, neat little moments, again, where Alicia's talking about how the fabric feels. Because, again, we're dealing with someone who is blind, so she doesn't know, but that texture and all that kind of that she would have going on. I thought that was a neat little bit. And then you've got our paparazzi sneaking in and just dealing with the She-Hulk. You know, he's bent in a way that looks really uncomfortable. You know, that guy is not 100% medically cleared after this one. You know, the She-Hulk's going to be dealing with that one. And I love just seeing him stuffed like he is. And just, again, you know, in a way, kind of distorted, you know, and how he slammed in there. She was not gentle with him. And I loved seeing that. And again, the She-Hulk is a character that every time I read a story with her in her, I always go, man, why, you know, and I know why I never read She-Hulk younger, you know, because again, I've said on multiple times, I was an idiot, you know, and I never read female superheroes. But now that I'm, you know, more mature and actually going, damn, she's a cool character. She's on my list of people that I'm going to start diving into and actually reading some She-Hulk stuff. You know, so if anybody's got suggestions on a really cool She-Hulk story arc, throw it my way, please.
John Byrne's run.
John Byrne's. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I knew you'd have something right off the top.
It's fun. But, it's really John Byrne's run is really, really fun.
Awesome. Awesome. Because again, she's a character I really want to dive into. And like you said, I loved Sue using her invisible powers, and they just walk right past them. When they do, it's little subtle stuff like that. Is this a major epics part of a story? No, but it's a really cool moment because it does show the three of them, how their closeness and how much She-Hulk is a member of the Fantastic Four. She's not a reservist. She's not a friend of the Four. She is a member of the Four. Whether she's on the active team or not, she's part of them. And I love just the fact that we get that, that vibe just from these couple pages.
This issue was released December 15th, 1986, with a cover date of March 1987. The cover date never really matched the actual release date. It was always like a few months ahead of it. But this was a 1986 book, the at last issue released in 86. So I was getting my cover dates crossed with just the issue that we just covered in Avengers. It adds, actually, the fact that it feels so contemporary. When it was a 1986 release date. It's really funny, Jim. For you and I, 1986, because we were in high school then, doesn't seem that long ago. It was.
Yes, it was. I know. I don't like admitting that high school was a long time ago for me, yes. But it was. And again, I'll be honest, think back to when we were in high school, the paparazzi was still the paparazzi was still around. There was more of the tabloid journals versus the people with their cell phones, obviously, because we didn't have camera cell phones back then. But there was still the smarmy paparazzi doing their thing. So having the little weasel guy sneak in 100% fits that time period, especially with with celebrity weddings. You think back to when we were in high school, some of the celebrity weddings and the photos that were sneaked from the actual venue and this and that, and stories of people on boats with massive telescopic lens to get a picture of a beachfront wedding between two celebrities. I remember seeing that kind of stuff in in the various tabloid magazines.
In the meantime, I forgot totally about Dr. Doom maybe having one of the nicest caretakers in the world with Bachman. Yeah. Sitting here, I'm like, wow, does this guy look like he does not belong? I forgot about him. It's it looks like the kindest guy in the world, handling all of Dr. Doom's stuff. Like, hey, listen, I'm going to somehow get involved in the Fantastic Four wedding. I loved how there were certain rules that the villains were adhering to. I really liked the Fantastic Four as a team generates a different level of respect. We were looking at Secret Wars and we saw the interactions with Reed Richards and Galactus. There was a respect that was there. We're talking about a giant entity like Galactus who had a respect for Reed Richards in a different way than you would have other insignificant ants, which is what he considers all of us, right? This idea of the Fantastic Four garnering a certain level of respect, even though they are bitter enemies of some of these villains, was something that I always found endearing. Yeah. And it feels like it works. It feels like it's different and unique to them in a very different way. I loved how this played out. I also forgot how much I liked the Reed Richards and Franklin Richards relationship. Like, the kid in the book really worked. And as we've seen Franklin grow over the years and gotten to know more about Franklin and his unique abilities and things like that, I forgot about these years where Franklin was just a little kid and just interacting with the team the way that he was. I really liked how this all played out, because when Johnny comes in and he's having the conversation with Reed, and he's Uncle Johnny, and you see the two of them really needing to have this cool heart-to-heart, it was something that really meant something to me. I thought felt like two real people, and him looking at Reed as like, okay, Reed, you've got it all together. This kind of responsibility, this kind of direction and that type of thing is something you're kind of known for. I'm nervous. This is a big life change for me. And I love that conversation with Reed. It's not I don't love Alicia. I'm unsure about marrying her. It's more of I'm unsure about me. And I liked that humanity to Johnny in this, because I feel like everybody in life has certain uncertainties about themselves, and that made him more likable. As far as I'm with you, I was ready to turn into Johnny Storm into a punching bag after what he did to his buddy Ben, because I just feel like this is a line you don't cross. And I loved that in this process. Well, no, Johnny's a good guy. He loves Alicia, and these are two kids who are trying to get together and make it work and sort it out. His goal here isn't to stick it to Ben. His thing is here he fell in love with somebody, and he's just trying to get his act together. And I really liked everything about the reality of this story. This really worked for me.
Yes, yeah, and again, as I said, this was kind of a this page here was one of those kind of like growth moments for me, where I really did put aside that budding anger and hatred that I really had for Johnny Storm that I've carried throughout most of my life, but you're seeing just the maturity of him, and just the this isn't just a fling where he steals the girl. He actually fell for her. She fell for him. They had that connection. They had that moment. They had that growth together as, a couple. And you're seeing, the maturity of Johnny Storm here. And I thought that, for me, was like, okay, I like seeing this. This is something that I wish I'd read a long time ago, because I wouldn't have held this resentment towards the kid, all these years, And
I didn't realize. I knew that, there were the glares. But I didn't realize that you had such issues with Johnny Storm. Now I understand them more.
Now you do. Now you got it.
Yeah.
Now you understand. Hey. But again, it is kind of a neat story. That the way they're doing this. So again, this is another. I've been going through and reading Fantastic Four. And I'm not up to this point in the reread yet. I'm still multiple years. I'm still pre-Secret Wars in my reading, that I'm reading of the Fantastic Four. So I haven't gotten back to when, Johnny and Alicia get together and this and all. I haven't gotten to rereading any of those things yet. I'll get there eventually. But, it's kind of, neat seeing this part of it now. Because, again, I guarantee you I'm going to have a different reaction to when I read actually the first time Johnny and Alicia get together. So it's kind of neat.
Have you gotten to the John Byrne stuff yet?
No.
Oh, man, you're in for some good reading.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not there yet. I went really, really early Fantastic Four.
Okay.
Just like I did with Thor, and every time we got it, I'm like, hey man, I haven't read them in years. I'm not just the Hulk. I'm still the Hulk. I just started in the 80s now. I'm just now getting to the 1980s of the Hulk. So it's I think I want to say I'm still in the 70s with Fantastic Four, but I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But I'm still very early in the Fantastic Four reading.
Byrne's run on the Fantastic Four I read when it was coming out, and it was. I haven't had a chance to go back and reread. I'm anxious to reread it just because I loved it so much when I was younger. I became a big Byrne fan because of Uncanny X-Men, and tended to follow him to other work that he was doing in Fantastic Fours. His run on Fantastic Four is one of the seminal runs on Fantastic Four. It's just amazing, amazing stuff. I think you're going to really dig it.
Cool.
What he did with it. So it's really good stuff. I liked this bit with the Puppet Master and the Thinker and Leader and everything that was going on here, where these were reasons to bring in and have unique partnerships between some of these villains. We learn a little bit about the Puppet Master's power, how he can take any one of these puppets, and the key there is one. Any one of these puppets and control them. I like that little the dragon puppet that we see later on is actually sitting there prominently.
Yep.
Because we do
great foreshadowing. Great foreshadowing. Yeah. I love that. Because again, I loved how when when this scene's first up, you see Reed Richards, you see, Ben Grimm sitting there. You got Spidey in the background, and all these other characters that I'm looking at. I'm like going, oh, he could go with him. He could use him. Didn't even notice the dragon at all because I was so focused on the Thing sitting there. I was focused on Reed Richards, even Spidey. This was brilliant job on, again, this is some great writing, great layout for the future.
I got to correct myself. It's not the leader, it's the wizard. I keep thinking of big domed head, which drew me to the leader, but they're two very, very different characters. But I thought the wizard and the thinker and the puppet master team up was really, really good. This is an example of where the puppet master is kind of like, had enough of some of the ones that Alicia's getting together with. I like that, he doesn't want Alicia hurt. He really just wants to smack down Johnny Storm and the Thing, as part of this process. So he's got certain ground rules from all this. Like, we can do this, but we are not going to hurt Alicia. And that part is really interesting in this process as far as it goes with an interesting point of what does it really mean to hurt somebody? There's the physical pain and there's the emotional pain. And this storyline becomes a very, very interesting journey for Puppet Master. And I really liked how that played out. I love when you get to see a villain's humanity. And I thought we got to see that with the Puppet Master in this and how it played out. I love that he was featured so prominently on the cover because he's a big player in this storyline. But I thought his arc was also intriguing.
The thing I loved about the Puppet Master also is his rationale that he threw out to his partners.
Yeah.
One, he's like, I don't want anything hurt her. But two, once we kill the Storm, she will inherit all of the Storm's money. Yeah, I love just that whole play out there saying, hey, this isn't just about protecting her. This is about her getting really rich and then we take the money from her. And I love that, again, a great way to get the other villains on his side to wait until after they're married. Wait until after they're married. She lives. We kill him off, she gets his money, and then we get the money from her. It was brilliant layout. And again, great usage of just, the character and the explanation, the rationale why his two partners would go along with this. So waiting until after the ceremony. I loved it.
So how does that mean? Because I don't see the part where he's saying that they get the money. How?
Well, that's implied. When I was reading it, that was implied. That they would then get the money from her. Okay. That's why he wants her to have the money and then he would get the money. That's okay. There's no actual statement of it. That's me thinking off page.
Because the first question, if I was these two guys, I'd be asking them is, okay, and how do we get that money? And that's I actually love your thinking off of this. I'm like wondering why the two aren't asking the question. Like, okay, great. So why are we going along with these conditions? And what does that do for us? Because legal entanglements and things like that are not usually something that villains like to play around in. It's like, right. Just give me the money. I think it's an intriguing premise that they're going with.
Off page, I've got the conversation going on.
Okay.
Where they're talking about this and they bring up that question and the answer is very simple. Who will it be easier to steal the money from? Mm-hmm. Her or Johnny, who will have all Reed Richards and all that stuff. She will be the easiest target to steal from.
Yeah, and actually Alicia historically was victim to quite a few predators who were preying on her with a perception of her weakness, which more often than not, she showed. Alicia's an interesting character that I think over the years has continued to evolve and grow and become stronger. And actually, I really like the character of Alicia Masters because, she went from being just the straight-up damsel in distress to having some really strong character arcs of her own. And I feel like that's an example of you have to, if you're going to keep using a character, they have to continue to grow, mature, and evolve in a way that makes them worth reading. And if it's constantly that they're just going to be tied to the train tracks, there's a point in time where it's like, we've seen her tied to the train tracks already. Yeah. Enough. What else is there to her? The surface level characters tend to fade into the background. In the case of Alicia, they've done a really good job over the years of continuing to evolve and grow her. She has some strong moments in this issue in particular. I think the sequences with her and Ben were absolutely outstanding.
Yes.
So,
God, yeah.
Yeah, so you get the idea of why she's like this really, really good person. The Puppet Master's use, I actually really loved that when he took over Franklin, the two panels, the adjoining panels, where he's trying to get like, okay, they've kept this wedding top secret. I'm going to get the info on the wedding. And when you see Franklin's eyes mirroring, and even the expression mirroring the Puppet Master's, I thought those were two great panels where you get to see what that control really manifests like in those situations. It was cool to see that done with Franklin, because even if he's like hiding around the corner and they caught him, he was the perfect one, because it's common for a little kid to, sneak down at night and those type of things. So it was the perfect puppet to use at that moment was Franklin, because it would have been something you could have easily passed off. This was well done, because I don't think Johnny and Alicia would have caught on what was going on with Franklin at that moment.
Oh no, they want to, and actually probably if they would have seen you like, hey, little buddy, gotta go to bed. Okay, Uncle Johnny, and he'd go off the, traipse off the bed. And even when the Puppet Master releases control of him, the kid wouldn't think anything of it. He'd be like, oh, okay, and he'd just go, and the kid wouldn't question, hey, I was laying down in bed, now I'm standing here. I don't remember getting over here. What's going on? A kid would say, oh, okay, and he'd just trace back and go back to sleep. So again, perfect puppet form.
The wedding day, when we've got his plan B, where he's planning to use Ben Grimm as a foil for all of this, I think was really great. The robots, and the fact that we had the Thinker and the Wizard setting up these robots and planning for their own invasion of the wedding was something that was great, because everything was being set up, as far as, okay, what is this chaotic wedding going to look like? I really appreciated the way they went with this. They didn't go your traditional method on this, and I think the issue was better served for it. I really liked that this was a different sort of take on how to do one of these superhero weddings. These moments, though, with, I've already referenced it, the moments with Ben showing up and saying, I need to have a conversation with Alicia. This was great Ben Grimm writing, great Alicia writing. The Puppet Master hearing this and hearing this whole sequence and being influenced by it, I thought was something that was really awesome, because he goes through this moment and you get to see the guy's got a heart. Yeah. Because how do you not be influenced by the conversation that these two are having? I love the page count they gave this. The fact that they gave a good almost page and a half to just the dialogue between Ben and Alicia, and the Puppet Master overhearing all of this. The story was well served by this.
Yeah, and again, it gives a good closure to Ben and Alicia. It's you could very easily always keep that third wheel kind of love triangle thing going, and they're like, no, we are 100% squashing this thing right here, right now, and I like that. One of the it could have been a very weak crutch that they could have later pulled into the story arc, and I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm glad they said, no, this is it. We're going forward, and Ben looks like a great guy. Alicia looks good. Everybody comes out looking strong at the end of this. At the end of these couple pages. And again, agree with you completely. Love that they gave them enough time to tell the story. And I loved how the fact that they do show the Puppet Master's listening the whole time. He hears everything that's happening. And it's actually even affects him. He's like, you can see the turmoil on his face. And I love that.
It's interesting how Alicia is a character that throughout her history has had some very, very interesting relationships along the way. She's been attached to Ben. She's been attached to Johnny. She's been attached to the Silver Surfer. She's a character who certainly had some interesting relationships along the way. And it's interesting to see where the character has gone. She'd been married more than once, which is an intriguing sort of process with her as well. And squashing the relationship between the two of them, I think, is a bit extreme on what you're seeing here.
Right.
Only because their story's not over.
No, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, actually, I think what it was is an example of a class. Ben did, I think, the best thing you can do to try and maintain he cares about her. He genuinely cares about her, and she genuinely cares about him. And the thing that shows in that situation, you have two ways you can handle that. You can either support her because you really do care about her, or, you can be kind of selfish and self-motivated and keep the distance and not support her. He makes the decision to support her and to support Johnny in that he's standing up with them at their wedding. That is something that I think is super cool, shows a class, even though, let's be honest, he still is madly in love with her. I mean, there's no two doubts about it. And I actually really love the reality of that piece. I think he handled it as classy as he could, and so did she. There was a great character moment for both. If anything, I think that moment is a pivotal one that leaves the door open for the future for those characters because of the fact that it sets in foundation kind of who the two of them are as people. And it was something that I think really, really works and didn't take anything away from her relationship with Johnny.
Right. Yeah, it's, again, when I say squash the relationship, I mean, as of right this moment,
Closure and support.
Closure and support, yeah. Because, again, he very easily could have done the thing where he doesn't even show up, and
yes,
that, I know there's a lot of people out there, who've had that situation where they're like, I just can't be there. I just can't show up, and
right.
Not been there.
Oh, yeah. And I think at various times, maybe everyone's been in that situation to a certain extent. I think what Ben did and what Alicia did is a lot harder. And I loved how that was written. It showed a maturity. It showed a class. It's something we can all learn from. That's one of the things I love about comics, and I love good storytelling in general, is where you can sit there and go, oh, geez, got to learn how to handle things that way in the future and that type of thing. I think we all grow from those stories and experiences. I think that handling of situations like that is few and far between, actually. That's unique and shows a maturity and mutual respect that the characters have. Actually, let's be clear, though. As Ben's referencing, that relationship did not always go there. They had a lot of problems along the way. This was Ben's apology tour.
Yeah.
So we're giving Ben a lot of props. Ben really had to step up here and apologize for past mistakes. That's actually the part that I love about it the most, because I read a lot of the storytelling where Ben was less than stellar in this. And I really love that this was kind of a full circle kind of, okay, I got to drop this. I've got to drop this. And that's the part I think that's, if you look at it in isolation with this issue, you're missing a much larger story where, no, Ben coming in and mentioning the fact that he knew that he was less than top of the game on this one was very true. And I like that this was kind of a sweet moving on for both of them. It puts Ben in a good place to be able to come back and be more of an active member of the team and do some of those pieces because of the closure off of this piece.
Yeah.
That part was great. Puppet Master and the building drama at the wedding, where he was going to have Ben go off on Johnny Storm. So interesting that he chose not to do it at the 11th hour. I really liked where that went. I liked when we saw that puppet go right back in the bag. I'm like, now I thought that was it. I did not realize where it was going to go from there. I loved that they made me think that was the exclamation point. And when you turn the next page, we go back to that puppet from before, where he's now brought that synthetic creature down on them. And it's him versus the two of them and their robots. I thought that was a great choice because here's the thing. It's a superhero comic, right? I want a battle. Yes. And they gave me a battle in a way that was satisfying, and I think more satisfying than the chaos.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. And it's funny because, when you see Puppet Master reach into the bag, you see a little bit of an orange-ish head. So they're really making it look like he's reaching for the Ben Grimm doll because he just had that in his hand, and they're showing that in his hand. I'm like, oh, something's about to happen. You flip the page, you go back to the warehouse, and then when I first saw the dragon come in, I'll be honest with you, I forgot I had seen it before. And I was like, wait, what? And then I see the Puppet Master holding the dragon icon. I see his eyes kind of like reminiscing over the dragon, like, oh, this is cool. I immediately said, why is he doing this? But this is awesome. And I got really a couple great pages showing the dragon just kicking everybody's butt. I love the fact that they weren't prepared for this dragon fight. The villains were getting ready to fight the Fantastic Four. They were getting ready to fight anybody who may be in attendance. And they weren't planning on the dragon coming down on them. So completely caught them by surprise. Element of surprise. I was like, damn, that is awesome. This right here, couple pages, really good fighting. We see the villains get their butt kicked. It's I even love the fact that when we finally get the explanation why the Puppet Master did it, why he had the dragon puppet with him, why all that played out and it all made sense. I was like, oh, I love this. This is an absolutely brilliant story. This was a powerful, moving story between a good character story between Johnny, Alicia, and Ben, and now we get a really cool villain combat fight sequence. This for me was an absolutely wonderful, brilliant issue.
Yeah, I love the bit with the Thinker where the Thinker the robot was there. Even in this situation, he wasn't going to let himself get caught by the Fantastic Four. That was something that I thought played out really well. I liked that the wizard escaped. Everything worked really well on that whole piece, and you're right. It was very satisfying. I even like the little bit where it jumps back to just outside the chapel, and we get to see him greeting the people outside the ceremony. I thought all of that played out really well. That part worked. Everything was just really, really great. The gift from Dr. Doom and the flowers and the fact that I love that the flowers are wilting at the end. We're starting to see the petals come off. Very clear indication that this truce from Doom, because Doom's like, hey, in honor of the wedding, I'm going to give you a little bit of a truce. For as long as these petals are still, for as long as these flowers are still thriving. And it's like, we're seeing the flowers wilt. Knowing that that's not going to last very long. I thought that was a great way to end. And again, that respect that I talked about earlier. I don't think that would work for every superhero team. I think the relationship between Doom and Reed Richards, it does. It doesn't change just how diabolical and evil and Doom is driven to be all powerful. Doom is driven to be the guy, and then some. And that quest never changes, but there is a class to Doom. There is a respect to Doom that often gets lost. And I love that felt like such a Dr. Doom move. And that was just, to me, another example of terrific writing and a great choice. Roger Stern really nailed it on this one.
Oh, God, yeah. This, as I said before, has all elements of a great story. And you put it best when you said this is a one-and-done story, but it also gives you enough information as to who these people are, why you would want to continue to read Fantastic Four.
Right.
It gives you plenty of strength on every single member of the Four, their supporting cast, even getting to see some of their coolness of their villains. This, for me, was a great way to let somebody know who are the Fantastic Four. Well, right here. And this is even an issue where the Fantastic Four aren't doing any fighting. You add them as a combat element, when they're beating up the bad guys, that takes the story to another level, because I do love the team dynamics that they use when they fight. So, yeah, this was a wonderful story.
Yeah, it's over the years I've weaved in and out of the Fantastic Four, and I mean I've read runs of Fantastic Four, and I always get drawn back to them, and it's so interesting. I'm hoping this film that's coming out this summer really nails it, because so far the trailers that I've seen for it, especially as they continue adding on the trailers to them, it looks like it has all the right beats to it. This has the potential to be one of the better years of superhero movies with some of the releases. I think Superman, I think the Fantastic Four has that potential. Thunderbolts is, I think, surprisingly going to be like a sleeper fun film. The trailers I'm seeing for that look good. I think I'm hoping we're in this year where these films all are really good and do well just because they're really good movies. I'm hoping if they're all really good movies that we don't get this, these films, if they're good, get killed before their release with the online attacks. And to me, if it's a mediocre film, okay, fair enough. Films are expensive. I get it. You're going to spend your night out on films that entertain you. But I'm hoping if these films are of the quality they look like they're going to be, particularly to me, the two ones that I'm most interested in right now, admittedly, are the Fantastic Four and the Superman. Those are the two that are at the top of my tier. Thunderbolts, the trailer has gotten me more and more intrigued. I think it's just going to be good fun. So I'm looking forward to a good comic book movie that looks like it's just going to be good fun. I hope that delivers that in that level. I don't mean that in a diminishing sense. So Thunderbolts looks to me like a good popcorn flick. And I'm going to approach that like a good popcorn flick and hope I get exactly what I'm looking for there.
Yeah, I was thinking Guardians of the Galaxy. It has the potential for that. Where people aren't thinking that it's just going to be so, people are going into it thinking one thing and they're going to walk out thinking something completely different, is what I'm hoping on for Thunderbolts.
Me too.
And again, like you, I've been watching some of the trailers on Fantastic Four, and I think I'm at the point now where I'm done watching trailers.
Me too.
And this, just so anybody knows, I get to a point where I have to stop watching trailers because I don't want them to ruin anything.
Yeah.
So when I've got to the point where I'm like, okay, I think I got a good enough groove on this movie, I don't need to see anything else, I stop watching. Just like the Superman stuff. I've stopped watching all the trailers because I don't want any more surprises. I don't want to spoil any more surprises. I want to see the surprise on the big screen when it happens. And the same thing with the Four. I'm like, I've got enough now. I just want to. I'm waiting for the movie. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I think they got this down.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. I'm going into this optimistically, to see. Okay, I'm going to see the Fantastic Four. I think.
I'm glad we did these. These were good anniversary issues. Admittedly, I was really looking for the concept of done in one anniversary issues and focusing less on the content, figuring these would be fun just to go in a little more blind on what we were doing, and this wound up being some fun discussions. I'm glad we did these. RagingBullets.com is our show website. It leads into our Facebook fan page. It leads into X/Twitter. So that way you can find out all the news about upcoming episodes of the podcast. We are proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community and would encourage you to please sign up and join in the conversation there. Feel free to use it to promote and shout out anything that you're seeing. If you're a member of a blog, if you are doing your own blog, I should say, if you run a podcast, if you see news that's out there that you're like, wow, this would be of relevance to the audience. I get all my news there first. It's the first place I go every day. I like to check out what people are posting. I really appreciate the people that take the time to curate news. It's kind of a great way to get a litmus test on like what kind of topics that people are interested in, our show notes also have a form, a Google form that's on there. If you would like to drive some of our show topics, please feel free to click on that link, put your thoughts in on what you'd like to hear us talk about in the future. We shouted a number of ideas out in this episode. We constantly have stories that we want to do. I want to hear from you, though. Some of our best episodes have come from suggestions from our listening audience. So we love to have you involved, and we'll listen to your suggestions. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address where you can contact us right now. You can send us emails and audio comments that we can post on the episode. We love interacting with you and having you as a part of our show. So please feel free to contact us that way. And we are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Mr. Segulin, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
Bring on the bad guys, Doom, issue number 1, 36% off, only $3.19. Plus, we have Fantastic Four, issue 33, 36% off, $2.55. And Fantastic Four, issue number 1, 36% off, only $3.19. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com. We have our deals of the week, which include Batman Elmer Fudd, the deluxe edition hardcover, $19.99 regularly, 50% off, only $9.99 for a hardcover. DC's Finest, Batgirl, Nobody Dies Tonight trade paperback, $39.99 regularly, 55% off, only $17.99. The official handbook of the Marvel Universe, Master Edition Omnibus hardcover. There's 2 different cover versions of this one. $100 regularly, 46% off, only $54. And Tomo-chan is a Girl Omnibus graphic novel hardcover, graphic novel, volume 3, $24.99 regularly, 45% off, only $10.99. That is not a hardcover. But I just want to shout that out, and I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. The About Us section of our show website is where you can connect with us on our own personal social media, online gaming platforms, and you can also connect with me on Is It Jaws, which I'm on bi-weekly with Paul Spataro. It's a film review podcast, and really appreciate Paul making me a part of that podcast. And Jim, our next episode, we are going to be back in talking DC Comics. We're going to talk about the next 3 books in the Absolute line. We're going to talk about Absolute Green Lantern, Absolute Flash, and Absolute Martian Manhunter. We will see you next week.
Bye!
When Sean and Jim decided long ago to do a weekly comic book podcast show, they started slowly, then grew strong. To listen now, you can't go wrong. The Raging Bullets Comics Podcast Show.